Welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Staltari, and I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last several years, I have been focusing my attention on les filles à marier, which came from the filles du roi that I started in 2021. In 2023, I decided, I need to explore these women who came before les filles du roi. It's been an incredible journey. We're now on episode 85. So we've come a long way. There are about 262 of the marriageable girls. So let us keep going, and we're going to do them all. But before we begin, let me show you ways you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the know: subscribe, like, notify. The next are ways to help the channel grow. Coffee and Patreon are external platforms. We also have a YouTube super thanks that you can do. And also on my website, haverootswilltravel.com, we have a PayPal button. And don't forget, if you're on there, you can actually see the index of all the previous episodes of both Les Filles du Roi and Les Filles à Marier. So it gives you an easier way to know, oh, has she done my particular person yet? So have a look at that as well while you're there. So let's get started and get to know episode number 85, Les Filles à Marier. We begin, let's have a look at Les Filles à Marier. These were women who came between 1634 and 1662 to New France. They are the marriageable girls. These ladies did not come in groups. They came one at a time, maybe a few. They did not have a sponsorship. They did not have any gifts from the government or anything like that. Their passages were usually paid by a church or some sort of organization. But generally speaking, they took, their life in their hands, so to speak, and said, you know what, I'm going to try my hand at a new life. And in 1634, as many of you know, this was the beginning of the second stage of Quebec or New France. And there was nothing there. It was a barren, very, very small settlement. So the ladies, particularly those that came before 1655. And now we turn our attention to episode 85. I can't believe we're already on that number. Her name is Denise Lemaître, which actually means the master. And she is a viewer request, and I did not have her in my file, so let's get to know Denise a little bit better. Denise was born in 1636 in Paris, France. Her father was Denis Lemaître and her mother Catherine de Arme. Denise was born on the famous Saint-Antoine Street. It is here where the famous Bastille of 1789 was found. Constructed between 1627 and 1641, the original Jesuit church had been the first one in Paris to abandon the Gothic style and adopt a more Baroque one. So this church is an amazing one. In 1762, when the Jesuit order was forbidden and banished, the church was entrusted to some clergymen of the neighborhood. So you can see it really has withstood the test of time. Now, she is found in the 4th arrondissement. That is where she would have been born. And it is also known as Hôtel de Ville, and it's located on the right bank of the River Seine. The 4th arrondissement contains the Renaissance-era Paris City Hall, rebuilt between 1874 and 1882. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. And it is known for its little streets, its cafes, and its shops. But it's often regarded today by Parisians as horribly expensive and congested. And it is absolutely the place for those wanting old buildings and a mix of many cultures. So that is where she is coming to us from. Arrived on the Saint-André in 1659. She had been recruited to work at the hospital by Jeanne Mance. She later would become a midwife in Montreal, and she did enter into a marriage with a man named André Urtebise, the brother of Marin, who we looked at before, who married fellow fille à marier Etienne Alton. But unfortunately, the marriage never happened. He would end up dying in December of 1659 and was probably, we believe, part of some epidemic that was occurring. So that was very much a heartbreak for Denise. But someone was in the wings for her. The man would rescue her, or she would rescue. His name, Pierre Perrin de La Fontaine. He was born in 1616 in La Rochelle, France. His parents were Pierre Perrin and Jeanne Lesnie. Now, being born in La Rochelle is a place where it was founded during the 10th century and became an important harbor in the 12th. Until the 15th century, La Rochelle was to be the largest French harbor on the Atlantic coast and dealt mainly in all of the good stuff, the wine, the salt, the cheese. The name La Rochelle actually comes from the Latin meaning little rock. And this town, La Rochelle, has absolutely one of the richest histories in all of France. This is an area where the Knights of Templar had their strongest base. Eleanor married Henry Plantagenet in 1152, who would become King of England and became Henry II in 1154, and thus put La Rochelle under Plantagenet rule, until Louis VIII captured it in the 1224 siege of La Rochelle. During the British control of the city, in 1185, Henry II had the Vauclair Castle built, remains of which are still visible in the Place de Verdun. From 1568, La Rochelle became a center for the Huguenots, that's French Protestants. It was in La Rochelle that the Protestant revolutions occurred and created the uprising that would become known as the Siege of La Rochelle. Throughout the 1600s, Huguenots were expelled from this area. Now, he was, as far as I can tell, not a Protestant, but he was baptized at St. Marguerite, which at some times had been used by both Protestants and Catholics alike. So that was kind of an interesting little tidbit. To New France, obviously by 1660 he is there. He is actually a cooper. If you don't know what a cooper is, it means someone who makes barrels, as I created that image for you there. So he is definitely someone who comes and decides he wants to marry our beautiful Denise. On a probably very cold January 26th morning in 1660 in Montreal, Pierre and Denise were married. So the family would settle at Montreal, this wonderful city that would become Montreal. It started off as Ville Marie. And the founder, Paul de Chamédé, Sieur de Maisonneuve, and what he founded it essentially as a missionary center in May of 1642. But the colony did not do well. And it was on the verge of extinction when somebody decided to return to France to recruit 100 settlers, which would become known as the Grande Recrue in 1653. From this small group would evolve the Notre Dame congregation, from which Sister Marguerite Bourgeois created. And when Montreal was founded, the new colonists were rapidly confronted by a fearsome enemy, the Iroquois. Unfortunately, there was no regular army on Montreal soil until 1665, when the Carignan-Salieres regiment landed here. In the meantime, they had to organize their own militias. And on January 27, 1663, they established just that, 130 volunteer colonists divided into 20 squads, and they called themselves the Sainte Famille Militia. And so this is how they protected their city. This on the upper right, you can see this is a wonderful depiction, and I took it from a place called Montreal, 1642, from the Musée de Pointe-à-Callieres, and I just and I put the link for you to explore because it's a beautiful site. This, of course, is the modern Montreal that I love so much. A more antique is in the middle. We have l'Église Notre-Dame, and then we also have just the old Montreal and how it looks. And just to give you an idea, those of you who have not seen, do you know that for the longest time in my life, I did not know that Montreal was an island because it was, as a child, we would just cross the bridge and I didn't understand. Then all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, it's an island. But obviously those first colonists knew it was an island because it was very, very hard to get to. And in fact, the people of Trois-Rivières and Quebec City thought Montreal was just like a joke and were very surprised when it actually took over from there. So obviously Montreal grew mighty in the 400 years since it was built. Now in the 1666 census, we have Pierre listed as a cooper, Denise, Pierre Perrin, Jacques, and Marguerite. We have Pierre in the 1660. I love how they end up, being younger. So he loses 5 years here. So he's 45 in the next years. Denise doesn't lose anything. She's still 30. Pierre is 6. He hasn't aged. Jacques is 4. So that's why you really got to take these census with a grain of salt. You really got to stretch your imagination. And then we have Marguerite, who is 16 months at this point, which is pretty much a good guess. They have 3 animals and 6 arpents, about 4 acres of land. They moved to La Prairie, which literally means the meadow. And it was first given to the Jesuits in 1667. The seigneurie would develop very slowly, but by 1687, it had both a flour and a sawmill. In 1691, the lumber would act as a barrier to attacks from mercenaries who came from New England. A few years later, a small wooden chapel would be built. So it did, now it's part of Montreal. La Prairie is synonymous with Montreal, but back then it truly was its own unique city or town. So they would go on to have 10 children. Pierre would pass away at age 17. Their second son, Jacques, would also die at age 15. Marie de Marguerite was born a twin. Her twin would die in childhood, but Marie de Marguerite would go on to marry Pierre Poupart and would have 4 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. She would then marry Joseph de Merse and would have 2 children who would also survive. Catherine would die in infancy. Jean would marry first Marguerite Tétu, but she would die a year after their marriage at 19. His second marriage to Madeleine Roy produced 9 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Catherine would marry Eustache Dumas and have 6 children, all of whom would make it to adulthood. Jeanne would marry Claude Fay and would have 4 children, all of whom would make it to adulthood. Marie would marry Antoine Jacques Boyer and have 9 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Antoine's mother was Marguerite Thénard, who we saw in Fille du Roi, episode 239. And finally, Pierre would marry Marguerite Deal and have 1 child who did survive him before his early death at 25. Now, in the 1681 census, we have Pierre Tonnelier, a cooper, 60 years old, his wife, Denise, their children, Marguerite, Catherine, Jeanne, Pierre, Jean, Marie, 6 bêtes à cornes, so that's either 6 goats or 6 bulls, and they have 10 arpents à valeur, about 7 acres of land. Unfortunately, Pierre would pass away in 1684 at the age of 68, possibly 67, we're not quite sure. Although in the death record, it actually says that he's 90 years old. It's absolutely almost impossible to believe that he would have been that old. And we know that it's the right guy, because if you read, it says, en présence de Pierre Poupart, son gendre, which means his son-in-law, who we know married his eldest daughter. So we know that this is the man, but we also know that he wasn't 90, as far as we can tell. But that meant that she would need to find, someone to help her, because she had all of these children. So what's next? So Denise would marry and find a second husband in François Caillel. He was born in 1640 in Lemaître in France. His parents were Jean Caille and an unknown mother, so we don't have her name. Lemaître is a city of about 145,000 people. It's found in the Pays de la Loire region, and it is actually the capital of the Sarthe département. The history of Lemaître is one that dates back to 47 BC when the Romans seized the city. During the 11th century, when it was the capital of the ancient province of Maine, it was the capital for many battles. The English and French battled greatly here. Henry II, who became King of England, was born here in Lemaître. By the 13th century, Lemaître was reverted to French rule. In an interesting tidbit, Wilbur Wright, I found this out, had an official demonstration of his airplane in 1908. And then in 1923, the famous race of 24 Hours of Le Mans, the sports car race, began and is still run annually to this day. Now, the church that he would have been baptized in was rebuilt after the end of the 100 Years' War. The parish church of Saint-Ouen de Fossey was considered very, very old and too small to accompany, and the new church was built to accommodate all of the parishioners. And the students of the new college that was being built in that 16th century. The new church was built between 1675 and 1683, so a little after Francois was born. And it became a chapel after the disappearance of the parish of Saint-Ouen de Fossey during the Revolution. So much was lost during the French Revolution. As we can tell, in our own history, we know things have disappeared because of, the Civil War and all of that. This was their version of that Civil War. So a little less than 6 months after the death of her first husband, she remarried and at La Prairie. So let's see what happens next. Yes, it's true. 3 years after their marriage, her second husband, also died, leaving her a widow for the second time. She can't catch a break. But wait, this beautiful woman, Denise, was killed by the Iroquois in 1691 and was buried at La Prairie the next day. It actually, in her burial record, states that, which is fortunate for her descendants because we know. Oftentimes we don't know the reason for the death. In this one, we absolutely know. And she was 56 years old, and she left us with 154 descendants as of 1729, of which my viewer is one of those. So some further research, we have a fabulous book by Susan McNally, The Women of Ville-Marie. I cannot tell you enough how much this book impressed me and gave me more detail about the lives of the women, not only in Montreal, but certainly this focus on Montreal, but also of that time. And now those of you who can speak French, Les Filles du Roi, pioneers of the La Prairie Seigneurie, they have published a book on that, and I've given you the links to both of those. What a story Denise gave us. What a life. To have come with Jeanne Mance to become a midwife, to contribute to the growth of Montreal and La Prairie, to have two marriages and leave us with 154 descendants, and ultimately to lose her life to the native attack, the Indian attack, is just a study in bravery and courage and ultimate sacrifice. You can be very, very proud of this lady, Denise Lemaître. If she is your great-grandmother, oh my gosh, what a legacy she left. I also want to say thank you to my patient supporters and subscribers. You really are the wind beneath my wings. Thank you ever so much for everything. I really appreciate it. And so with that being said, let's see you on episode 86 of Les Filles Marie. Until then, au revoir.